So let's have a little chat, shall we? Let's have a little occult chat. The first 2 minutes of this video, I want you to listen to this news report, and then I will give my commentary after you listen to the news report.
In the murder of a 26-year-old tech CEO, police tracked down the suspect who has a long criminal history. Stephanie Ramos is here with the latest. Good morning, Stephanie.
Robin, good morning. This guy has a really long rap sheet. He was considered highly dangerous.
Pay attention to what they said. Let me pause it for a minute. Pay attention to what they said. This guy has a really long rap sheet. This guy has a really long rap sheet. Pay attention to what they said. I want you to hear that again.
But was
Criminal history. Stephanie Ramos is here with the latest.
I want you to hear
Good
this
morning,
again.
Stephanie.
Robin, good morning. This guy has a really long rap sheet. He was considered highly dangerous, but was caught overnight in
Long rap sheet, considered highly dangerous. Continue listening.
Bowie, Maryland, after 2 days of being on the run.
Overnight, Jason Dean Billingsley, the suspect in the murder of beloved 26-year-old tech executive Pavel Lapierre, arrested. The urgent multi-agency manhunt ended after law enforcement tracked him to this Maryland train station, authorities taking him into custody without incident. Lapierre, a promising young CEO at the head of a tech company worth millions.
Hi, I'm Pava. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Eagermap.
Found dead just before noon Monday at her Baltimore apartment complex. Police say she showed signs of blunt force trauma. Some officials asking why Billingsley, a registered sex offender, was out on the streets at all. Billingsley sentenced to 30 years after pleading guilty to sex crimes in 2015, released last fall for good behavior. But legal experts say this is not uncommon.
Now, this is where I want to stop the video. And this is where I want to give my commentary. This man, Jason Dean Billingsley, if I can, which I can't really call him a man, he murdered 26-year-old Pava Lapierre. And I don't know the nature of their relationship. I don't know if this was a random act, but it does not seem like this was a random act. This seems like she was someone that he knew. And it doesn't matter. It may come out that they may have had an intimate relationship. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry, and I feel so bad for her family and for her, of course. I feel so bad for her family that this happened to her. But this is another prime example of how the U.S. justice system has failed so many people. So when I hear stories like this, see, we're going to have a real conversation because everything ties into the occult. Everything ties into spirituality, spiritual lessons, whatever you want to talk about. Or whatever you want to think about it, rather. Here's my problem. In the beginning of the video, you heard the person say, the news lady say, that this man has an extensive record. He was sentenced to 30 years in 2015, which was almost a decade ago, for pleading guilty to sex crimes. Then they released him last fall for good behavior. This is what I'm talking about. Art really does imitate life, and life does really imitate art. I remember years ago, and see, they show us in these TV shows, in these movies, they sneak the shit in what they've really been doing for a long time. And we as the public, unless you are spiritually in tune, you don't see it. Now, I know I'm going to go off the rail a little bit, but bear with me because it all is full circle and it makes sense if you follow me and just stay with me, okay? I used to watch All My Children back in the day. That was a daytime drama, the one with Erica Kane who married all the husbands. Remember All My Children, y'all? For some of us who are older. Okay. Do you remember the storyline with Janet Green? She was Natalie's twin sister. Remember, she threw Natalie in a well and she assumed Natalie's identity, right? We're gonna have a conversation about this because this is the way the world is moving. We didn't see it 30 years ago, but this is what they were telling us 30 years ago in a lot of these shows. So Janet Green eventually she went to jail for her crimes because she ended up murdering Will Cortland. She went to jail. Around 2 years later, she's in jail and she has bandages all over her face. We don't know that that's Janet. The warden or the penal system approached her and said, listen, if you go through this experimental plastic surgery, we will let you out on good behavior, right? So they wanted to basically change her entire face. And of course, another actress was playing her. It was not Kate Collins who played the dual roles of Natalie and Janet. Nevertheless, they let her out of jail. She goes back to Pine Valley and starts attacking people. She tried to murder people, but then they rehabilitated her. She was rehabilitated. She ends up marrying Trevor, her sister's husband, the one that she tried to kill Natalie over because she was obsessed with Trevor. Remember? She ends up marrying Trevor. Then years later, Kate Collins comes back as Janet, and we find out she's gone crazy again, and she killed Trevor. Right? Let's take it a step further. Let's go to One Life to Live. They had a storyline that was epic. That was one of the most epic storylines in daytime drama of the 20th century, back in the early 1990s. It was the storyline with the gang sexual assault of Marty Saybrook. And remember, it was Todd Manning, Powell Lord, and Zachary Rosen, right? Todd Manning, Zachary Rosen, and Powell Lord. They all sexually assaulted Marty Saybrook. They all did. It was epic. And it was epic because daytime had never really gone, One Life to Live or no daytime show had really gone in that direction during, in daytime history at all. So the early 1990s was really getting us prepared for what was going to happen. I knew that when the year 2000 came in, I knew things would never be the same in this world. I knew it then. Everyone kept talking about 20. No. I knew when 2000 hit, I remember I was on the beach in Virginia Beach. It was 1999. And I felt the Spirit speaking to me. I felt the Spirit speaking to me saying, you know what? Enjoy this time right now because the world is getting ready to change in a way that you've never seen before. And I felt the Spirit telling me that to enjoy. I was standing on the beach, Virginia Beach. It was beautiful. And it just felt so peaceful. And I was just like enjoying it. But I felt the Spirit talking to me saying, you better enjoy these good times. This was right before the year 2000. In 1998, 1999, I had just graduated high school, okay? So going back to the storyline, they all sexually assaulted Marty Saybrook. All three of those men, all three of those characters. Now, this is all fictitious, but I'm just making a point. Todd Manning, the character of Todd Manning, they rehabilitated him. And they turned him from a sexual assaulter into a lord, meaning they made him part of the rich lord family on One Life to Live. They gave him a business. He ended up being a millionaire, and they ended up allowing him to redeem himself from what he did to Marty Saybrook, which I thought was absolutely fucking disgusting. Personally, I never really liked the character of Todd Manning. I thought the actor was a nice looking white guy, but I never really liked the character of Todd Manning, right? Let's take it a step further. The movie Tales from the Hood, the last segment where the guy from Moesha that died in a car crash, remember, he went to jail. His name was Crazy K. He went to jail, and they offered him this program in prison, that if he went into this program, some type of behavioral modification program, he would be out on the street, because he had gotten arrested, and he was going to get like life because he had killed so many people. But they offered him this behavioral modification program. This shit goes on in the prison system. It's all funded by the shadow, I'm going to say the shadow government, because they pick particular men like this one who are black. See, a lot of these men like him, they think because they have higher IQs or potential higher IQs, they think that there's something special about them. But just because you have a higher IQ does not mean that you are a good person. And it does not mean that you are a very in tune person. It just means that you're probably more swift at getting away with crimes. This is why a lot of black men, when they go to jail, they can get out and get jobs. They can get employment. Doors open for them like nothing. When niggas go to jail, if you notice, any black dude that goes to jail, when they get out, they're able to get jobs, they're able to get housing, they're able to get loans, they're able to get grants to open up businesses. That's because they are backed by this wicked system that we live in. Remember, it's not spirit, it's not of flesh and blood. It's spiritual wickedness in high places. And I'm not no Christian, but I'm just saying, it makes perfect sense. So it does not surprise me that this man was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Let me go back to the.
Could get out in 2020.
Let me see.
Based on could be.
Crimes in 2015.
So it does not surprise me that this man who pled guilty to sex crimes was sentenced to 30 years. If he pled guilty to sex crimes and was sentenced to 30 years, the crimes he committed must have been very, very ferocious and very vicious. But they let him out a year early. They let him out a year early because he probably agreed to some form of behavioral modification program within the prison system, or some type of program to reform sex offenders. And they let these people out, and then they use the public as the guinea pig. They risk our lives and our safety all in the name for this bullshit, but you can't say anything about it, because if you do, oh, you use hurting the black man. Oh, he's a black man. You gotta have compassion for him. Fuck that motherfucking bitch. I don't have no compassion for him. He sat up and murdered this woman unjustly. And people in the comment section are talking about, well, why is it only CEOs and tech people? It's not about her being a CEO or a tech person. He took a human life unjustly. And the bottom line is, this man should have never walked the street again. He should have done the 30 fucking years. But you probably had some liberal, could have been a black one, could have been a white one, behind the scenes helping this person to get out early. Because a lot of these people who call themselves counselors and therapists, a lot of them are just as demented and crazy as this person. And they want to put as many people like this individual out on the streets, which risk the public safety. our public safety. It risks the public safety. But see, you can't say anything about that. See, I remember when I was in high school, there were dudes just like him that I was in high school with. And everybody wanted to say, well, they're smart and they have potential and all that. Yeah, they have potential to harm people. They have potential to harm people. But this reminds me of the purge. They're opening up the jails and letting people out while the public sleeps. While we're being distracted by Trump, government shutdowns, or the illusions of them. I don't depend on the government, so I don't, that doesn't bother me. We're so busy distracted by Trump and distracted by fake race baiting, agenda based people that we don't see what's clearly right in front of our face. This man has a long, extensive criminal history. He should have been in jail where people like him belong, but they are opening up the jails. They're opening up the doors and they're letting a lot of these people out. Just within in the past few months, we've had people that just walked out of the fucking jail and escaped. That type of stuff didn't used to happen years ago. But now, because you can't say anything to black men, or you can't say anything to black people in general, you can't enforce so are you telling me because he's a black man, he should be allowed to terrorize people? Because back in the early 90s, they used to let black men do that. They would let them terrorize other black people. Black men that should have been in jail. Some of them motherfucking niggas I went to school with, even though they was teenagers, they didn't need to be walking amongst the public. They needed to be in jail or institutionalized because they were problematic. Half of them niggas I went to school with had track records and they were only 14 and 15 at the fucking time. And I mean violent track records. I'm not talking about, misdemeanors, maybe being caught with some weed or maybe driving under the No. I'm talking about these dudes had violent criminal histories. But the problem is the black community, this is what they uphold. This is what they celebrate. This is what they celebrate. They've celebrated people like this forever. This is what they celebrate. And as a result, this is the result. This is the result of bad decision making. And I'm listening to this person say, well, it's not uncommon for anything like this to happen. I'm appalled and I'm shocked. Because I thought if someone was sentenced to 30 years after pleading guilty to serious sex crimes, which I thought was a major felony, how in God's name could you then say this?
Released last fall for good behavior.
How can he be released after only serving 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 20, only serving 7 years? See, that's a ritual in and of itself. They only kept him in there for 7 years. That's a ritual in and of itself. And then now, while we're up under the vibration of the number 7, we're up under the 7th dimension. Then he goes back to jail after murdering this woman. After murdering her. She's 26. He's 30. Let me see. Oh, my friend. Okay. Wait a minute. Excuse me. Give me a second. She was 26. She was 26. He's 30. It comes out to the number 11. These are all Masonic occult numbers. You can look at this motherfucker and tell that he ain't shit. You can look at him and tell he's not shit. But they let him out. They let him out. And they do this more often than not. There are so many of these niggas that really need to be in motherfucking jail. But see, they have bamboozled people with this race game. They've bamboozled a lot of people with this race game. And don't get me wrong, I understand that there's racism and injustice or whatever. I get that. I understand that. I'm not turning my back on that. I know that there are innocent black men that things have happened to that should not have happened to. I'm not turning my back on that and I'm not denying that. But this bitch right here, he is not innocent. This bitch is not innocent. He's not in that category. This bitch has been walking around the public and no one even knew of the crime. They said he had an extensive record and they let him out anyway on good behavior. I thought, now maybe I'm a little bit rusty when it comes to the law, but I thought that if you had an extensive record and you plead guilty to serious sex crimes and you are sentenced to 30 years, I thought that the good behavior thing, that was really null and void, especially if it's based upon your record. So that goes to show you that nothing that they tell us is true. This is a prime example of how the justice system, or whatever you want to call it, if you even can call it a justice system, this is a prime example of how the justice system fails us each and every day as a civilized society. As a civilized society, people like that should not be walking around in public. He is not a civilized person. He is an uncivilized individual. And I don't give a fuck who gets mad about me saying that. And the reason that I'm so upset is because they use Black Lives Matter. They use all of these racist situations and racist stories for people to have compassion for black men or black people. But then at the same time, the black people who are really wicked and evil, let me tell you something. Black men are some demonic ass motherfucking people. And I don't care who gets mad. Black men can be very demonic and evil. Trust me, I've seen the evil that these motherfuckers have done. I've seen it. They don't just do it to black women. They do it to other black men. They do it to their families. They can be some evil, demonic ass motherfucking people. But we're supposed to sit back and hold our breath and hold our tongues and not hold our tongues, not our breath. And we're not supposed to say anything because they're black. And because, you know, black men are discriminated against. Yeah, we know that. But he wasn't discriminated against because he's part of the system. He's part of that dark system. Now, I would really like to know, just out of my own, just for my own information, how does he, excuse me, how does he know? I had orange for breakfast. You know, sometimes that acid makes you belch. How does he know? What is the connection between him and the young woman that was murdered? It doesn't really matter, but I just want to know out of curiosity. Was she dating him? Did they have a sexual relationship? You know, I mean, Was it, I don't know. Did he just randomly choose her? And this is why white women or non-black women, you have to be careful. You have to be very, very, very careful. Black women, you got to be careful too. Y'all got to be very careful because a lot of these, see, he's young. He's 30 years old. A lot of these newer breeds of black men, they have a demonic spirit attached to them. They have a demonic spirit attached to them. I don't give a fuck who gets mad. If you take it personal, you take it fucking personal. I don't give a fuck at this point. Because he could have did this to your daughter. He could have did this to your mother or your grandmother or your aunt. But unfortunately, he chose to do this to someone else. He shouldn't have done it to anyone. But they let this man out for good behavior. The justice system, which is, I'm going to call it the unjust system, because there's no justice in that motherfucking system. The unjust system let him out unjustly for good behavior. And that's because they don't tell us that they have these behavioral modification programs in the prison system that is sanctioned by the CIA and probably other government intelligence agencies. He's a sociopath and a psychopath. He has a psychopathic, sociopathic tendency and tendencies. I can look at him and tell that he's a sociopathic person. When I go on social media, I see men with that same expression on their face. He has no remorse in his face. He has no fear. He has no type of regret for what he did. Just look at him. But they let this animal out on the streets. Maybe I shouldn't have said animal. I don't know if this video get flagged or not. I don't give a fuck. They let this motherfucking animal out on the fucking street to harm other people, and then he goes and harms a woman at that. A young woman at that. No, I have no compassion for him. Now, what are they going to do? Give him another identity and let him out again? Because when I look at the pictures of him, he looks different, much different. He looks much different in both of his pictures because is this even the same person, or did they go through the same plastic surgery with him like they did Janet Green and All My Children? Because he looks different. They look like two totally different people. So what's really going on? What's really going on here? The bottom line, he should have never been let out of jail. This monster should have never been let out of jail. And it's so interesting how they are still not giving us all of the information that we as the public should have about this person. What type of sex crimes did he plead guilty to? Why are they hiding that? Why won't they tell us? What type of sex crimes were they against children? Because he looks like the type. Usually when someone blunt force trauma, when I hear that a lot of times, to me, just like stabbing, that is a crime of passion. That is what it sounds like. That is a very angry, hateful, negative demon. But this is what they let out. This is what they subject the public to. I know a person now, he's an older guy. I don't really care for him. I know a person now. He's in his mid 60s. He's from Texas. He murdered 4 or 5 people. He got 30 years and then they let him out because they only charged him for 1 or 2 of those crimes. If you murder one person, depending on the circumstances, if you're defending yourself, that's different. I believe in self-defense. But if you're out here murdering people unjustly, purposely, and maliciously, there is no way you should be able to walk free again. There is no way. That's just like early part of this year, they were talking about what's her name? I don't know the woman's name, but you know the Charles Manson family, that cult that killed all those people back in the 60s. One of the women that was part of that cult that was involved with the murder of actress Sharon Tate, they let her out recently. They let her out. I think the bitch should have stayed in jail. They let her out. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of, there's a lot of mixed ideas about Charles Manson and his participation in that. I'm not here to touch on that. I'm talking about the people. It's usually the people that do it for these people. And that too was orchestrated by this unjust, what we call government. Because it wasn't just Sharon Tate. They killed Abigail Folger, who was the heir to the Folger coffee fortune. And they killed Sharon Tate. And rumor has it, they cut. Sharon Tate was pregnant with Roman Polanski's child. I don't think Roman Polanski was supposed to be there, but he wasn't. He was somewhere else filming a movie, I believe. This was in 1969. And this crime right here kind of reminds me of that in a way. It has a Charles Manson-esque type of energy to it. Because it doesn't make sense that a man that was sentenced to 30 years for pleading guilty to sex crimes in 2015, it doesn't make sense why they would let this man out on good behavior. There is no good behavior in that. They don't have any good qualities. These type of men don't have any good qualities. They don't have any redeeming qualities. I don't give a fuck what none of you motherfucking bitch niggas say. I don't give a fuck. Fuck you and your fucking sympathy for this piece of shit. You don't know if that woman was a mother. I know she was a daughter. She had a family. She had a future. You know, I was gonna make a video yesterday talking about this. I heard that they canceled the Fresh and Fit podcast. I don't know if it's permanent. I don't know. But when I really sit back and think about a lot of things that are just not adding up, and this ties into this situation right here. I remember back in 2007 when, I remember back in 2007 when Asia McGowan was murdered by that psychopath, Tony, whatever his name was. And then he in turn killed himself. Now, what's interesting is about Tony, me and that dude that killed Asia McGowan, he and I used to go back and forth and toe to toe because of some of the vile, disgusting things he was saying about black women. I mean, he was saying the most awful things about black women, saying that black women's vaginas smelled, and he was just saying some really, I don't even mean to bring that up, but I'm just letting you know the type of vile, disgusting person that he is and what he was. And you know what? I'm glad he's gone. He didn't deserve to breathe breath. And I don't give a fuck who gets mad about what I'm saying. He got mad because he and Asia McGowan, they went to the same university. I believe it was in Ohio. I could be wrong, but they went to the same university. And he wanted her, but she didn't like him. And then on top of that, I believe he was a fucking Christian. Yeah, I believe he was a Christian. But he and I used to go toe to toe, and he used to block me because he could not combat me verbally. Most people cannot. He blocked me, and then not long after that, he murders Asia McGowan. Now, what's interesting is this. Long before there was Tommy Sotomayor's and Fresh and Fitz and Kevin Samuels, there were other people, other black men who were laying the groundwork for their, let's just say, their myopic views on relationships between black men and black women. Okay? And one of the men at that time, who I will not name, was kind of blamed for inspiring this Tony person to go after Asia McGowan, not directly. I don't think he did not directly say, go after Asia McGowan. But what he did was he put some stuff out into the universe about black women and about how black women reject black men and all this other, delusional bullshit. So Tony was one of this person who was a well-known black woman, whatever you want to call it, basher back in the day, which is what I call him. Tony was a follower of this person. Tony followed this person's ideologies about black women. And this dude that Tony followed, he was always talking about how black women were fat, black women were obese, black women were ugly, they were masculine, nobody wanted black women. I mean, he used to just say some of the most, it was so disgusting that even me as a gay man, it was really, really, really hard for me to listen to that type of stuff. Because my mother is none of those things. My mother is petite. My mother has never weighed more than 145 in her life. My mother is like 5'4". Okay? But she gave birth to me, a big giant. You know what I mean? She gave birth to me because I'm a big boned guy, big guy. You know what I mean? She gave birth to me. Because most strong warrior goddesses like my mother, they give birth to bigger people, bigger men. But I'm a man. Okay? Whether I'm gay or not, I'm a man. My mother is none of those things. So I'm thinking to myself, when all of this was going on, when I ran across this person's videos, not Tony, but the one that Tony follow me now, y'all. Not Tony, the one who murdered Asia McGowan, but the man who Tony followed. He used to say the most egregious things about black women, and he's still around. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's in the medical industry, if I'm not mistaken. Everyone has the right to their opinions. I'm not trying to tell somebody what not to say or what not to think. Whatever. You know what I'm saying? But when your opinions start putting the lives of other people at risk, when your opinions are causing division and chaos, that is where the problem comes in. That is where the problem comes in. So Tony, unfortunately and tragically, he murders Asia McGowan. And then he did the same thing to himself. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is because it ties into all of the violence that we're seeing against women now. And see, I'm going to post this person's picture, Billingsley, whatever his name is, Jason Billingsley. I'm going to post his picture because I want people to see what I'm talking about. And the metamorphosis or the metamorphosis that I've seen in black men over the years. See, I'm getting older now. So I'm beginning to see, as a seer, the metamorphosis that I've been seeing with black men over the years. This guy, Jason Billingsley, who murdered this woman, he has tattoos all over his neck. I'm going to say it again, and I've talked about this. What is this ritual with black men getting all these tattoos and defacing their bodies now? What is this deep? Because see, these are not regular black men. These are not real black men. This is probably why I'm not attracted to a lot of black men anymore. Yeah, y'all, there's some things that are changing in my paradigm. This is why I'm not attracted to black men anymore. Now, we're supposed to be attracted to black men, right? We're supposed to be, admiring them and all that. But over here, the people that's really showing me love and respect and that want to worship me and treat me good are non-black men, specifically white men. What's happening here? I get a lot of white men that be trying to come on to me all the time, and a lot of them are good-looking white men. White-collar types of white men that own their own businesses, or if they don't own their own business, they're the CEO or the boss of where they're at. No bullshit. These men want to worship me. They want to give me money. They want to do all they just want to date, but I reject a lot of that because I'm like, I don't really want to be worshipped. I don't really want that. I have a friend, and which I do. I have a friend, but I'm just making a point. And then we're supposed to like shit like this piece of shit, Jason Dean Billingsley. But this is what we're left with, and we're supposed to ignore this. We're supposed to ignore this person's demon because he is demonically possessed. That's a demon. That is definitely a demon. So when I think about the Kevin Samuels and the Fresh and Fits and the evolution of the manosphere, this is what they've created. Y'all can say what the fuck you want about black women. I know black women got their motherfucking shit with them too. And this is really not, I don't really want to get into that arena again, but everything ties into the occult and the hidden knowledge and the hidden things that we don't see. Y'all can say what the fuck you want to about black women, but I don't hear about too many black women going around murdering men. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm not saying that black women are perfect. I'm not saying that black women don't have their motherfucking issues, because they do, like anybody else. But this demonic shit right here, you don't see a lot of this in black women. You see this in black men. You see this in black women, in black men. And I'm looking at his neck. He has nothing but tattoos all over his neck. What is this new demon with tattoos with black men? Because I noticed that any black man that I see with a bunch of tattoos, he has a problem. They're problematic. But that's right, we're supposed to ignore that. These cults and groups, they have created volatile, dangerous black men like this, and they've been doing it for over a decade, for almost 20 years now. Maybe even longer. What type of mind control demon is this? I keep telling you all, Hollywood, social media, anything that's supposed to have any type of elitism to it. People are always talking about, see, this is the whole scam that people are not focusing on. People are not really, they don't get it. We've been scammed into believing that Hollywood is ran by Satanists. Hollywood is not ran by Satanists. It's not ran by Satanists. Hollywood and all of the and this type of energy and all of these types of people that you know, the Kevin Samuels, the Fresh and Fits, and all of these other motherfuckers from the so-called demonic manosphere and whatever. Okay, whatever. It's not. These people are not ran by Satan. They are ran by Yahweh. This is the spirit of Yahweh, the entity from the Orion system that people are talking about now. This is the evil entity of that Bible that they call God. This is not satanic energy. Hollywood is ran by Yahweh. Remember, Yahweh allegedly is supposed to be an evil entity from the Orion star system. Remember, one of the major productions in Hollywood is Orion Pictures. Orion Pictures, that production company with the logo of the universe. Hollywood is not ran by satanic things, or say not things, but satanic energy. It's ran by Yahweh and his archonic assistants. These are low-level motherfucking people. This person, Jason Dean, the demon, or if you want to call it that, or the evil entity, is Yahweh. This is produced by Yahweh. He is controlled by the sons and the archons of Yahweh. It's not satanic. If you notice, most of the people in Hollywood, they always talk about giving thanks to that God in the Bible whenever they get anything. They even have a whole production company called Orion Productions. And isn't that where Yahweh, the evil entity, is supposed to be from, allegedly? The Orion system, star system, or galaxy, whatever you call it. Yahweh is the Antichrist, because Yahweh goes against the real Christ energy. I told you all a long time ago that the Bible had it all wrong. Jesus was at war with the so-called Father. That is why he was in the Garden of Gethsemane asking, Father, why have you forsaken me? Because what Jesus was trying to tell people is that this is all some bullshit. You got to go within. You ain't supposed to be worshiping no God in the sky. You got to go within you so you too can become Christ-like, meaning the God within you. If you notice, all of these niggas that commit crimes like this, all of these niggas who preach division and discord and darkness, all of them are always talking about they're a Christian and they are a believer in God, because they're walking portals for that evil entity, Yahweh, Yaldabaoth, Jehovah. I guarantee you, Jason Billingsley is probably one of the same types of people that goes around talking about how much He loves God. How much he's a Christian. How much he's a God-fearing person. You're damn right you're a God-fearing person. You're right. You are fear, but you ain't no God. You're an archon. You're a demiurge. You're a demigod, which is a demon, a low-level demon. And that is what we're dealing with. When I hear people talk about, oh, they did this satanic ritual in Hollywood, they doing, no, none of it's not, they're the mask or the illusion. See, this is where wisdom comes in. This is where wisdom comes in. The illusion, they'll give you the magician's trick that it's satanic or that it's connected to Luciferian energy. See, I didn't figure this shit out. And I did this and I talked about this in another video too. My perspective. I don't give a fuck about nobody else's. If you got a different perspective, that's on you. This is what I see. I see the game that they're playing. They know people are stupid. And they know people, the majority of the public, at least 2 or 3 billion people, are going to believe anything that they see that goes against their so-called Christian values. They're going to believe that it's satanic. When in actuality, the God that they worship is the evil entity. And I'm not trying to convince them to not worship the God. I'm not. I'm just calling it out. I don't give a fuck what you worship. You can worship Lillian Gish's dry motherfucking cooch. I wouldn't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. This is just my work. This is what I do because I am the occult view. And I see things multidimensionally. And I see what is possessing him. He's possessed by the spirit of Yahweh. That is what he's possessed by. A lot of black men are possessed by the spirit of Yahweh. That is why they do the shit that they do. That is why they hate. Now, let me go back to what I was really talking about earlier. That is why a lot of them hate you as women. Because Yahweh hated the fact that the great mother Sophia, I believe that's the name, that the great mother Sophia, which is the real Christ, the great mother Sophia was a being of true light and came from a realm of light and was the realm of light. And he thought he was the only God. Yahweh thought he was the only God, or Yaldabaoth, whatever you want to call him. He thought he was the only God. And his demonic archon said, well, if you're the only God, then who is that? And that is where things got a little interesting. Now, I'm speaking all in allegory to give people an understanding of why there is so much hatred for the woman, especially the black woman. Because when you really go back to The Color Purple, no matter how we feel about Oprah Winfrey as a person, she played the motherfucking shit out of that role, Sophia. Sophia was the redeemer of that family. Mr. was Yahweh. It wasn't Seeley. Mr. was Yahweh. Mr. was Yahweh and Seeley was Eve. Sophia was the one that was sacrificed. That's why she played the role. That's why they called her Sophia, because she was representing the great mother Sophia in that movie. That is why all of the men hated her. Her husband hated her. Mr. hated her. You know, Danny Glover's character. He told Harpo to beat her. Seeley, when she was in her lower self as Eve, because see, if she was in her higher self, she would have been Lilith. Because Lilith is really the higher aspect of Eve. I'm starting to get it now. He told Harpo to beat her, to beat Sophia, because he's Yahweh. He hated her. He said that she thought too much of herself. But what he really hated was that light that emanates from her. They had Seeley operating in her lower self, in her lower Eve. Sophia was the one that said, girl, you need to bash Mister's head open and think about heaven later. Remember, they had this conversation. They had this conversation about heaven and all of that. So it was all symbolic and allegorical. But the hatred that you see for the woman now is a manifestation of what's going on with a lot of these men, especially a lot of these black men. Because they've been possessed by the spirit of the Antichrist, aka Yahweh, BKA Yaldabaoth, and Jehovah. They've been possessed by that spirit. And they hate the light that emanates from the divine feminine energy, which is the woman, particularly the black woman, but the woman in general. They hate that light that emanates from females. Just like I was listening to something that T.S. Madison was saying about the situation in regards to Angelica Ross and Ryan Murphy. You know, Angelica Ross, the trans black woman, she and Ryan Murphy were going, they've had a falling out. He ghosted her because she wanted to do a season of American Horror Story that only dealt with the black witch's perspective. But the problem with that is that they wanted T.S. Madison and I guess Angelica Ross to star in that. Now, Angelica Ross, I can see. T.S. Madison, no. The problem is you have a lot of people who were not born biological women. They want to take over in a realm or in an arena where biological women dominate. Wisdom really comes from the woman. That is where wisdom comes from, the woman. So when I look at this Jason Billingsley person, it becomes full circle. It goes from Tony, the guy that murdered Asia McGowan. It goes to all of these, manosphere ideologies. All of that is manifestations of Yahweh and that Bible. Because the Bible has a lot of disrespect for women. And I'm not promoting no feminism or none of that shit. I'm not promoting no fucking group. So don't get it fucking twisted. I'm just pointing things out that are in plain sight. I'm not involved in any fucking groups. So I don't want nobody taking my words and trying to use them in some type of agenda-based bullshit. This is not about that. This is not about hating black men. This is not about, any of that. But it's about observing as an occult scientist the change that I've seen in black men and the spiritual reasons behind it from my own perspective. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Go and take your vitamin B12. That's what Fiona Good said in American Horror Story Season 3 after she used her powers to choke Gabourey Sidibe, Queenie. You know, go and take your vitamin B12. Shit. And just tap into your spirit and you'll see what's going on. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.